Harvey shows no mercy.
Everything is gone. What do we have?
The rain is relentless and won't stop for days.
It's overwhelming, the amount of rain. It's too much for the first responders.
Houston is paralyzed, thousands rescued.
We'll give it everything we got, and we won't stop until we can't go no more.
Many more are trapped by rising floodwaters.
I mean, the water came so quick. Right now, it's at the roofs of the houses. So there's no way out.
Streets are jammed with boats.
We are striving for a new normal here.
I want to be done. I want this town to be back like it was.
This is the CBS Evening News.
And welcome to a special edition of the CBS Evening News. I'm Nora O'Donnell in Houston, where Harvey has unleashed historic amounts of rain and devastating floods. Behind me is the Convention Center, which is serving as the largest evacuation shelter in downtown Houston. CBS News has learned there are now nearly 5,000 people inside here tonight. Now, that is almost full capacity early in this disaster, and there are still so many days of catastrophic flooding ahead. We have also seen dramatic rescues all day long in flooded neighborhoods, some by civilians.
I'm Anthony Mason in New York. Harvey barreled ashore Friday night as a Category 4 hurricane. Since then, more than 30 inches of rain have fallen in the Houston area. Now a tropical storm, Harvey is forecast to drop another 10 to 20 inches by Friday. The official death toll is 2, but authorities fear that will rise dramatically. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has mobilized the state's entire National Guard, 12,000 strong, to help in the rescue and recovery. President Trump has declared states of emergency in Texas and Louisiana, making them eligible for federal disaster relief. He visits the region tomorrow. Before and after pictures tell the grim story of Harvey's wrath.
It is incredibly grim, Anthony, and we should note, too, that the Federal Emergency Management Agency says they expect to be working here on the ground in Houston for years to come. Mark Strassen joins me now. Mark, you've seen some of these rescues.
We have, and on so many levels, Nora. The deluge of rain is now matched by a deluge of need in the flood zone. FEMA estimates 30,000 evacuees will need shelter within a couple of days. More of Houston's flood survivors left rooftops in a basket today. 20 Coast Guard helicopters have plucked more than 300 Harvey victims to safety. But officials admit there aren't enough helicopters, boats, or high-water vehicles to reach everyone. Emergency systems were overwhelmed. By this morning, 75,000 people had called 911 desperate for help.
I know of yesterday, we pulled 76 people to dry land.
76 people.
76 people.
One day.
In one day.
Mike Hawthorne, a captain with the Houston Fire Department, said volunteers with boats and trucks have been lifesavers.
The need is overwhelming. We, as city entities and governments, have resources, but we don't have enough. It is neighbor helping neighbor.
Many victims are tweeting for help in real time. Civilian rescuers are checking social media sites for locations of people in distress. These evacuees arrived at a Houston shelter by dump truck. Battered by the elements, their future uncertain, but grateful to get out alive.
We're happy because it was already almost like more than my waist. The water.
Roughly 4,500 people have crowded Houston's major shelter, its downtown convention center, and more keep coming. Many, like Kenesha Brown, a mother of 2, wish they had been given more warning.
Do you wish they'd given an order to evacuate?
I do. We was waiting. We called like all the numbers. We couldn't even get nobody to come get us.
But Harvey exploded from a tropical storm to a Category 3 hurricane in 30 hours. Officials believe an evacuation order might have created a different disaster. Highways of trapped evacuees fully exposed to the storm's fury. Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner.
It's difficult to evacuate 6.5 million people. Unless you're providing fuel and all those other things.
Police are investigating reports a family of 6 drowned yesterday. when their van overturned trying to escape through rising waters. We spoke with a family member who didn't want to give his name.
The water took them. The water took the whole van and went into a ditch. My uncle jumped out. National Guard ran over there, tried to open the doors. They couldn't get the doors open. All my nieces and nephews drowned. My grandpa.
Were you close to your nieces and nephews?
Yes, they're my babies. They're my babies.
Something else to consider in what is already a catastrophe, flooding may not crest until Thursday.
And that is the big fear that comes in the days ahead. Mark Strassman, thank you so much. Private citizens have heeded the call to use their boats for rescues, and DeMarco Morgan has been reporting in Dickinson, Texas.
Since the flooding began, we've seen many instances of people taking out their own boats to rescue others who were stranded.
We were in like our garage up to here and yelling, and we flagged them down and came and rescued us.
So thank God for strangers.
Thank God for that, yes.
First responders in Houston have received thousands of calls for help. This afternoon, Texas Governor Greg Abbott announced he's activating the entire Texas National Guard. They are doing their best, but there are so many still in need.
It's too much for the first responders. You know, they need help.
People have used whatever flotation device they have, even putting strangers on their backs and wading through knee-deep water to help. Many have used their fishing boats this weekend for another purpose.
This is our savior.
We'll give it everything we got, and we won't stop.
Joshua Mataños is part of the Cajun Navy, a flotilla of volunteers from Louisiana. He traveled more than 200 miles to help the hundreds of residents stranded in Dickinson, a small town 30 miles east of Houston.
Louisiana's in a bind. They come for us, we'll come for them. We'll help them out as much as we can.
The National Weather Service is calling this event unprecedented, saying the impacts are unknown and beyond anything experienced. But some are willing to risk it all.
We're here for a purpose, and by the grace of God, we're going to do what we can.
The waters here in the town of Dickinson have started to recede, but now it's causing a problem for boat owners who pretty much brought their boats out to help with the rescues. Nora, a mandatory evacuation is now in place for the residents here as the rescues continue.
All right, DeMarco Morgan there in Dickinson, thank you. Overnight, the Army Corps of Engineers began releasing water from 2 reservoirs that are to prevent additional flooding right here in downtown Houston. But that ended up sending floodwaters pouring into some neighborhoods. David Begnaud is in one of them. David.
Nora, the city says it had to be done, and the people here knew it was coming. On Saturday, there was flooding in this neighborhood, but it wasn't in homes. This morning, when they released the water, it was a game changer.
You need help, come out!
Fleetwood subdivision in West Houston has become an emergency evacuation zone. Water is rushing in from the nearby bayou and reservoir. People who refuse to leave are now forced to call for help.
How long have you been waiting to get out?
13 hours?
Yeah, about 13 hours.
Hey, y'all need a ride? We're coming!
And they're getting it from civilian Samaritans.
Where are you? Okay, come downstairs.
We were on a boat with Truett Allen when a woman yelled help from her second-story window.
Open the door, we'll help you.
Hello, how are you? Yes, fine, thank you.
She walked out of her home with 3 feet of water inside of it. Down the street was Laura Blinton. The water was up to a foot in her house.
And I kept telling people came by, and I said, no, it's going to be fine.
The urgency of the moment is palpable. People on their roof, signs saying help, and children whose faces are unforgettable. The baby in the arms of his mother, who's in the arms of a rescuer. The young boy seemingly alone, if not for his stuffed animal. The 2 children carried away by Harris County Deputy Rick Johnson. No one around here seems angry.
Are you able to walk?
Just grateful, like Laura Blinton, who left behind her husband's ashes, saving her own life on her birthday.
Do you regret not leaving sooner?
Yes, I should have.
As the rain gets heavier, the Coast Guard just left. The rescuers are gone, but there is one woman in the corner of this neighborhood where the water is rushing in who was determined to stay behind. I asked her why, and she didn't want to say. She knows that the water is rising and 911 is overwhelmed with calls for help. But she said, I'm not leaving, Nora.
That is the decision that some make. David Begnaud, thank you so much. Scott Padgett is chief meteorologist at KTV2. That is our CBS station in Dallas, Fort Worth. What have you learned?
What I've learned, Nora, is that Harvey has gained strength. And the unfortunate thing is that Harvey's out over the open water right now, drifting to the east-southeast at 3 miles per hour, and will be out over the open water through the night, through the morning, and even through Tuesday afternoon, even closer towards Wednesday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, then making another landfall right near probably Port Sabine, near the Beaumont area, and then pushing inland as a tropical storm. And then by Thursday and Friday, working into the Mississippi River Valley and then downgrading to a tropical low. But you can see still a lot of rain falling through parts of Houston, near Galveston. And as we take a look, that rain spreads into southwest Louisiana and even over to near New Orleans. I sampled the rainfall rates anywhere between 1/2 of an inch to near 1.5 inches of rain per hour, adding more rain on top of these 72-hour storm totals. Dayton seeing 39.72, Pasadena 32 inches, and we are going to continue to see another possibly 15 inches in Houston by the time we go to Wednesday, Thursday, and Nora, we will continue to see these totals go up a bit more as Harvey makes another landfall.
Incredibly worrisome, Scott. Thank you so much. We should note that here in Houston, shelters like the one behind me are quickly filling up. So some evacuees have been bused to San Antonio. That's about 3 hours away. Maria Villarreal is there. Maria, good evening.
Well, good evening. San Antonio has been taking in evacuees for 5 days. 1,100 people coming here for some sort of shelter. And as we speak, buses stand stage. They are ready to head to Houston when it is safe to pick up more people and bring them back here to the Alamo City. School buses, normally filled with students, are now filled with families forced out by Hurricane Harvey. Nicholas Tyre and Shelby Burley evacuated Rockport with their 2 small children.
We don't have nowhere for them to go. We don't know what we're going to do. We don't have any other resources outside than what we're getting here.
Most of these shelters were unequipped for children. Families made do with makeshift cribs made out of cardboard boxes before a nonprofit arrived with real cribs.
At night we can sleep a little better knowing that they're not going to fall off and hurt their head or get hurt in any other way.
New arrivals are registered and issued identification tags to keep families together while officials search for empty beds in shelters. So far, 4 are open and more are needed as San Antonio is preparing for more than 10,000 victims.
There's pets, there's seniors, there's people who are in hospitals. You know, the levels of impact are huge.
Michael Guerra is in charge of San Antonio's food bank. On top of taking in and sorting donations, their crews are preparing 4,000 hot meals and 2,000 emergency food boxes every day.
We're the largest food bank that's near them, so we're already mobilizing forces in Texas to be able to come to their rescue and to come to their support. We're going to mobilize the rest of Texas to come to their aid.
Houston's food bank is closed because of the flooding, so major donations are being diverted right here to San Antonio. As of right now, we know that this will continue on for at least a week until things hopefully clear up. Nora?
All right, Maria Villarreal in San Antonio, thank you. And we've got much more coming up, including our visit to the U.S. Coast Guard Command Center, a dangerous, massive coordination effort that is underway tonight. Now let's turn it back to Anthony Mason in New York. Anthony.
Thanks, Nora. President Trump will fly to the disaster zone tomorrow and possibly again next weekend. No decision's been announced on which towns the president will visit. Today, he insisted Congress will act swiftly to approve a multi-billion-dollar recovery package for Texas. Coming up next on this expanded edition of the CBS Evening News, new questions tonight about Mr. Trump's business dealings in Russia. And later, a new missile launch by North Korea. An important new development tonight in the investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 election. CBS News has confirmed that an attorney for President Trump's real estate empire reached out to a top aide of President Vladimir Putin during the campaign. As Major Garrett reports, the exchange appears to directly tie Mr. Trump's business inner circle to the Kremlin.
In January 2016, just as primary season was heating up, Michael Cohen, a longtime attorney for the Trump Organization, emailed Dmitry Peskov, chief spokesman for Russian President Vladimir Putin. Cohen sought the Kremlin's help with a proposed Trump Tower project in Moscow. Cohen wrote, "I respectfully request someone, preferably you, contact me so that I might discuss the specifics as well as arranging meetings with the appropriate individuals." It does not appear Peskov responded. Today, Cohen told CBS News' Jeff Pegues that he discussed the deal with Mr. Trump 3 times and that Mr. Trump signed a non-binding letter of intent in October 2015. By that time, candidate Trump had surged to the top of the Republican polls.
And I'll get along with Putin.
Cohen also traded emails with Felix Sater, a business associate involved in the Trump Tower Moscow project. Sater claimed to have deep ties inside the Kremlin. "Our boy can become president of the USA and we can engineer it," Mr. Sater wrote. "I will get all of Putin's team to buy in on this. I will manage this process." In a statement today, Cohen described Trump Tower Moscow as, quote, "a building proposal that did not succeed and nothing more." The project was scrapped shortly after Cohen emailed Peskov, the Kremlin spokesman.
The campaign is on its way to victory.
Cohen did not take a formal role in Mr. Trump's campaign, but regularly appeared on television to praise the candidate. Negotiations over Trump Tower Moscow occurred between September 2015 and January 2016, a period during which Mr. Trump praised Putin and Russia.
Think of Putin, pretty tough cookie, right? If Putin likes me and if he thinks I'm a good, smart person, which I hope he believes it, I am. Actually, he's right. I am brilliant. You know that, right?
6 months later, the president denied having business dealings in Russia.
I have nothing to do with Russia. I have nothing to do with Russia, and even for anything.
The White House had no comment on these revelations. When asked today if he considered Russia a security threat, President Trump declined, saying only many countries fall into that category. He added he hopes someday to have good relations with Moscow. Anthony?
Major Garrett at the White House, thanks. Still ahead, more from Houston, and North Korea flexes its muscles again. North Korea flexed its muscle again today by launching a missile that flew right over Japan. CBS's David Martin is at the Pentagon tonight with more. David?
Anthony, the Pentagon confirms that while this missile flew over Japan, it did not fly far enough to be a threat to the United States. According to initial reports, it broke into pieces and fell into water several hundred miles east of Japan. But this represents a major escalation in tensions over North Korea's missile program, since all the other launches in recent years have been fired at a high enough angle that they would always come down in the Sea of Japan, short of Japanese territory. This time, the Japanese government had to warn civilians living in northern Japan to take shelter, and a Japanese government official called it an unprecedented grave threat. Anthony?
David Martin at the Pentagon. Thank you, David. In a moment, Nora O'Donnell will be back with a look at the Coast Guard's role in the rescues.
The U.S. Coast Guard is playing a major role in search and rescue operations. 550 Guard members have flown in from all over the country, and more are on the way. 15 to 20 aircraft are up at any given time. And today we visited the Coast Guard Air Station and spoke with Commander Jim Spittler. Where did they all come from?
So these helicopters came from all over the nation. They go from Cape Cod all the way down to Miami, over to San Diego, and back up to Traverse City. Almost every Coast Guard unit has added helicopters to our fleet.
We've been having a tough time driving in this. I don't know how your pilots are flying in this.
The weather is very bad out there. The bands come through. The visibility goes to near zero. The winds are gusty, 30 or 40 miles an hour. But we train for this. We train for this environment, and this is what the Coast Guard is for.
How dire is the situation?
So right now it's significant. They're triaging the emergencies, the medical emergencies, the kids, the elderly. We're doing our best to get everybody we can, and there are just so many people.
Are you worried about meeting the need?
No, the Coast Guard will meet the need. We'll be here until it's complete, and we'll continue to put assets on scene.
It really was remarkable to be inside the hangar with these pilots and rescue swimmers. There's a rescue swimmer on every single one of these helicopters. I don't think any other news outlets got that sort of access to talk to the Coast Guard there. They were busy. They are working around the clock. We'll have more from inside there and talking to many of those that are on the front lines of this rescue effort. That's more tomorrow on CBS This Morning. Let's now go back to Anthony Mason in New York. Anthony.
Doing an amazing job. Thanks, Nora. Some stations will be leaving us now, but for most, this expanded edition of the CBS Evening News will continue in a moment. I'm Anthony Mason in New York. We'll see you soon.
Born and raised, this is the worst I've ever seen it.
We almost died.
On the first floor, it's up to here.
My house is gone. It's in half. All my kids' stuff is gone.
45 minutes, the water was just gushing in. His medicine got wet. He already had 3 seizures.
How are you doing, ma'am?
This is the CBS Evening News.
And welcome back to this expanded edition of the CBS Evening News as we continue our coverage of Harvey's wrath. I'm Anthony Mason in New York.
And I'm Nora O'Donnell in Houston, which has been hit by unprecedented amount of rain, more than 16 inches yesterday. That is the highest one-day total ever. August is the wettest month on record in Texas. And to put this in perspective, the National Weather Service today added 2 new colors to its rainfall charts, including light pink, which signals 30 inches or more. 10 to 20 additional inches are forecast by Friday. At least 2 people have been killed. That number is expected to rise. And there have been thousands of rescues in Houston and surrounding towns. Anthony?
Nora, it must be amazing to see all this play out in front of you. Yeah, Harvey blasted ashore Friday night as a Category 4 hurricane in Rockport, Texas. The area was under a mandatory evacuation, and about half heeded the call. Today, residents returned to pick up the pieces. Jamie Yukas is in Rockport tonight. Jamie?
Anthony, the response is remarkable, even in an area that was so hard hit. This is the Mobile Command Center, where officials have been mobilizing for days, hoping to get people back into their homes as quickly as possible. But what residents are returning to is heartbreaking devastation.
All my kids' stuff is gone. Everything's gone.
Stacy Forbes and her 2 children rode out the storm at a family member's home in Rockport. They returned today to find their home destroyed.
I don't know. I just want them to be happy and start over and forget. I want to be done. I want this town to be back like it was. I grew up here.
The small town of 10,000 will never be the same after Harvey roared toward Rockport late Friday night, pummeling this town for hours with 130-mile-per-hour winds and 20-foot storm surges. The area, known for its whooping cranes and fishing, took the brunt of the Category 4 storm, along with nearby Aransas Pass. 80% of the buildings here are in shambles. There was nowhere to hide. The punishing wind and water leveled buildings, tossed boats, and scattered debris for miles. The local high school took a direct hit. 1 person was killed and at least a dozen injured when roofs and walls came crashing down. Hundreds of aid workers have poured into town to help out. There is no water, power, or food here, and the cleanup process is expected to take weeks, so residents are pitching in.
It's a blessing that they do that. People pull together in things like this, you know, especially in Texas and South Texas.
You can see the wind is still strong here, and so many trees are down throughout town. The biggest problem is the fact that there is no power. There are lines all around town that have fallen down that are now turned off as crews are working to restore them and get the power turned back on. But what I was just told by officials inside the Mobile Command Center is that it will be 6 weeks before everyone has electricity in this town. And Anthony, you can imagine that means it will be months, if not years, before this area is back to normal.
A long road back for Rockport. Jamie Yukas, thanks. And let's go back now to Scott Padgett, the chief meteorologist at KTVT, our CBS station in Dallas-Fort Worth. Scott, where's the storm now?
Storm, unfortunately, Anthony, is out over really warm Gulf waters. As you take a look, that set of circulation out over water temperatures of 86 to 87 degrees. Those water temperatures about 2 degrees above normal, and the warm waters about 300 to 400 feet deep. That's fuel for this heavy rain that continues to fall over Houston, over the Galveston areas, continuing the surrounding counties, and even into parts of Louisiana. So look at these rainfall totals by county over the last 72 hours. Harris County, where the Houston area is, more than 34 inches. Liberty County, that's where we're talking about. Dayton, near 39 inches of rain. So we are continuing to see that rain add up, and it's out over the open water, and will continue to pull its way out over the open water and then off towards the northeast in the Mississippi Valley by the end of the week, Anthony.
Unreal rainfall numbers, Scott, but there's also another storm now threatening the East Coast.
Yeah, there is another tropical system threatening the East Coast right now. As you can see, tropical storm watches and warnings in effect for parts of North and South Carolina. As right now, it's number 10, doesn't have a name yet, about 40 miles south of Charleston, South Carolina, but it will become Tropical Storm Irma as we go into the next 24 to 36 hours. Then by the time we go into Tuesday afternoon near the Outer Banks, and then it's going to be said and done out over the open water. Remember, the peak of hurricane season right around September 11th.
Scott Padgett of KTVT in Dallas, thanks. Now let's go back to Nora O'Donnell in Houston.
Anthony, thank you. We should note that some who have made it out of the floodwaters are still struggling to find shelter, relief, and medical attention. Some are taking refuge in churches as they wait for help to come. Here's Jerika Duncan.
This East Houston church quickly turned into an emergency shelter as evacuees searching for higher ground had no place else to go. And like Fabian Perez and his family, very little belongings left. I see your children don't have any shoes either.
Nobody has shoes. We just took whatever we can.
So you were literally escaping for your life.
We didn't think about nothing.
Yeah.
We just grab and go.
Some found comfort where they could, sleeping under tables and on rows of chairs. In the darkness, we found an emotional Nancy Gomez holding on tightly to her 7-year-old son, Jesus, who has cerebral palsy. Cousin Linda Rojas says he hadn't eaten since yesterday.
His machines got wet. His medicine got wet. So he already had 3 seizures. That's very intense for her, but all we can do is wait.
They've all been waiting for vital supplies. With no water and no food, floodwaters are making any deliveries nearly impossible.
This is not funny. This is not funny.
59-year-old Wanda Wilson, who arrived just before midnight, has run out of patience.
Can you please let me have a towel? My child is cold. I'm a mother. Once a mother, always a mother. My child is cold.
Some evacuees were sent to the convention center late this afternoon, but others are still waiting and hoping to get out of here soon. Jerika Duncan, CBS News, East Houston, Texas.
It's really hard to see it up close. Misery from Harvey stretches far beyond the hardest hit areas. Manuel Bojorquez is along the swollen Colorado River in LaGrange, Texas. Manuel?
Well, Nora, this is about 90 miles northwest of where you are in Houston. And just about 12 hours ago, there was no water here. The river rose as people were sleeping, triggering evacuations in yet another part of southeast Texas. This is the rushing Colorado River. Its rapids now running right through LaGrange, Texas, and into homes and businesses like the Cottonwood Inn, whose owner could not contain his grief.
Everything is gone. What do we have?
Jay Jajal came to LaGrange 20 years ago. His motel had never flooded. This is it now. We found David Perry helping others carry out their belongings.
About 5 o'clock this morning, swung my feet up to get out of bed, and I'm standing in the water. I was like, well, it's time to evacuate.
The Colorado River reaches flood stage here at 26 feet, but Harvey's rains have pushed the river to more than double that level. It hasn't looked like this in more than a century.
We're going to hang a left and go
Kim Smith fled the rising waters of Victoria, Texas, closer to the coast, but still finds herself looking for higher ground.
This hotel is in danger. They need to make sure they're watching out for themselves here. All these people here, like us, may need to leave.
You're having to evacuate again.
Again. I'm trying. It's worse than horrible, but at least I feel that we had running water and electricity and the safety of a bed. Most people that I know of in my family haven't had that.
Kim Smith and a caravan of people headed north to seek shelter. The river has now crested at 54 feet, but it's not expected to go below flood stage until Friday. Nora?
Manuel Bajorca is there along the Colorado River. Manuel, thank you. One of the most startling images from the disaster came from a nursing home in the city of Dickinson. Here's Omar Villafranca.
It is an image that is quickly coming to define Hurricane Harvey. Stranded senior citizens, many suffering from dementia, in a Dickinson, Texas nursing home, stuck in floodwaters up to their waist. The owner's daughter and son-in-law, Kim and Tim McIntosh, went to Twitter and looked online for a lifeline.
We were desperate. I mean, we were desperate to get someone there, and given we couldn't get through to anybody, I felt like no one was listening.
Their tweet went viral. And within a few hours, the residents were rescued. Among the most vulnerable during Harvey have been the elderly. 94-year-old Henrietta Bell was trapped in her house with her daughter when the water rose 2 feet above her head. They waited to be rescued with their neighbors.
I'm feeling a little tired. I'm glad to be here. I want to go in and sit down, put my feet up, and get something to eat. Oh, we're going to get something to eat.
Other stranded residents took care of a sick 95-year-old neighbor while waiting for help.
We've been out here since 7 o'clock. I haven't eaten, and he hasn't eaten. He's a diabetic, so they gave him the last crackers. They said they gave him the last 4. I haven't eaten all day, and I take medication along with him, and I'm sure other people out here have medication problems as well.
As the rescuers continue their work, folks from the photo that went viral decided to take their own picture, showing they are safely riding out the rest of the storm. Nursing home residents are now safe and secure at a different nursing home in Alvin, Texas, but their friends and family can't go and visit them because all the airports are still closed and the Houston roads. Let's take a look. Most of them are flooded. More good news, though. Some of those nursing home managers tell us that everyone in that picture is in good spirits. Nora?
Omar Villafranca, thank you so much for that update. That is good news. Texas Governor Greg Abbott again today praised the federal response to Harvey, saying he'd spoken on multiple occasions to President Trump and members of his cabinet. But as Nancy Cordes reports, several big political fights are looming over the cost of recovery and building.
Federal resources have already begun flooding into Texas. 2 million liters of water, 2 million meals, tens of thousands of tarps, all at the direction of FEMA Director Brock Long.
This shelter mission is going to be a very heavy lift.
Early estimates for recovery and rebuilding are at $40 billion and climbing. But FEMA's coffers have dwindled to $3.8 billion. And earlier this year, the Trump administration proposed slashing FEMA's budget by another 11%.
You're going to get your funding. It's a terrible tragedy.
President Trump made no mention of those cuts today.
We're dealing with Congress. As you know, it's going to be a very expensive situation. We want to take care of the people of Texas and Louisiana.
But Congress will be facing several other urgent deadlines when it returns next week. The nation's borrowing limit must be raised and the government funded by the end of September. President Trump has threatened a shutdown if he doesn't get funding for a border wall.
I hope that's not necessary. If it's necessary, we'll have to see.
And now some northern Republicans are calling out Texas Senators John Cornyn and Ted Cruz, who are pushing for more aid, even though they opposed a $50 billion relief bill after Hurricane Sandy. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie.
The congressional members in Texas are hypocrites. And I said back in 2012 they'd be proven to be hypocrites.
Cruz defended that vote from Houston.
I didn't think it was appropriate to engage in pork barrel spending where 2/3 of that bill was unrelated spending that had nothing to do with Sandy and was simply politicians wasting money.
FEMA is encouraging flood victims to begin filing their insurance claims, but that's yet another fiscal flashpoint. The National Flood Insurance Program is currently running a $25 billion deficit, and it's set to expire altogether in a month, Nora, if Congress doesn't act.
Wow, Congress has a lot to do. Nancy Cordes, thank you. And coming up next on this expanded edition of the CBS Evening News, how Harvey is fueling a rise in gas prices nationwide. Later, President Trump defends a controversial pardon.
Harvey's path cut through the heart of the U.S. oil industry. Now the storm's fueling an increase in gasoline prices nationwide. Here's Chris Van Cleve.
As Hurricane Harvey slammed into the Texas coast, it shut down some of the biggest oil and gas refineries in the country. The Houston area accounts for more than a quarter of the nation's gasoline production. This map shows all of the oil and gas operations in the storm's path. Nearly 20% of the country's daily gasoline refining capacity is now offline. That's over 2.5 million barrels a day, including the ExxonMobil refinery in Baytown, Texas. It's America's second largest, typically producing 560,000 barrels daily. Gas prices are up 4 cents nationally already.
Labor Day is going to be more expensive for drivers now.
Exactly. We already anticipated that prices would go up about 5 cents around the country. Now maybe even 10 cents or even higher in some places.
Tamara Johnson from AAA expects those places to include hard-hit Gulf states.
A lot is still yet to be known in terms of refinery damage, and if refiners are down for an extended period of time, we could see those higher gas prices upwards of 20 to 30 cents.
When Katrina devastated New Orleans 12 years ago, gas prices spiked nationally by 46 cents. And any increase in energy costs from Harvey could extend beyond pain at the pump. University of Maryland economist Peter Morisi.
People will see higher prices trickle through. Not just higher gas prices, but also perhaps higher prices for fruits and vegetables, as it costs more to get them to market, and a higher price for the airline ticket to go visit your mother at Christmas time.
Gas price spikes after a hurricane are not uncommon, but they are typically short-lived. That's assuming the refineries are able to get back online quickly. Experts say the longer they stay offline, the larger the price increase and the longer it will last. Anthony?
Chris Van Cleve. Thank you, Chris. Up next, President Trump answers critics of his controversial pardon. President Trump today stood by his pardon of controversial Arizona Sheriff Joe Arpaio. He issued the pardon as Harvey bore down on Texas. Carter Evans has the latest on a move that's thrilled supporters but angered many others.
Do the people in this room like Sheriff Joe?
To President Trump's base, former Maricopa County Sheriff Joe Arpaio is a hero. A convicted hero, found guilty last month of defying a court order to stop patrols that targeted Latinos. During his 24 years as sheriff, Arpaio's department was repeatedly accused of racial profiling.
I stand by my pardon of Sheriff Joe.
At a news conference today, the president addressed the pardon directly, saying of the 85-year-old Arpaio,
Sheriff Joe is a patriot. Sheriff Joe loves our country. Sheriff Joe protected our borders.
But reaction to Friday's pardon was swift and mostly negative. Arizona State Senator Martin Quezada.
This is an absolute slap in the face to the people of this community.
House Speaker Paul Ryan and Arizona's 2 Republican senators also opposed the pardon, with Senator John McCain saying it undermines his claim for the respect of rule of law, as Mr. Arpaio has shown no remorse for his actions. The sheriff and the president, both so-called birthers, have been allies ever since Arpaio declared in 2012 that President Barack Obama's birth certificate was a computer-generated forgery, a claim long debunked. Arpaio campaigned repeatedly for Trump, and shortly after receiving the pardon, he spoke to CBS Phoenix affiliate KPHO.
I know it came from his heart. 2 years ago, I supported him first rally, and I always said, regardless of pardon or no pardon, I'll be with him to the end.
Arpaio could have faced 6 months in prison, but legally may not be out of the woods. Civil charges are still pending. Carter Evans, CBS News, Los Angeles.
And in a moment, Nora returns with the story of Texans coming together in tragedy.
One of the worst storms in history has brought out the best in Texans, and we were struck by the many scenes of people coming to the aid of their neighbors. 10-year-old Javon and best friends Franklin and DeLeon, ages 16 and 14, ran through waist-high floodwaters to check on neighbors at their apartment complex in Houston. When a truck stalled in high water, 6 teenagers took off their shirts and started pushing. In Rockport, Miguel Juarez set up a makeshift aid station handing out free water. The H-E-B grocery store set up a mobile kitchen, providing free hot meals. And there were rescues. Neighbors used their personal boats to rescue Jane Rhodes in Friendswood. A woman named Janice was pulled from the water by her son and a neighbor. More than 2,000 rescues were made by National Guard and local authorities. Fort Bend County Sheriff Troy Nels lifted a baby into an airboat. And Houston SWAT officer Daryl Hudick carried Catherine Pham and her year-old son Aiden to safety. And to add to that, Anthony, tonight we've learned there are more than 1,000 volunteers in this convention center behind us helping fellow Texans. It's just one more reminder that people in Texas have a big heart.
Yeah, it's remarkable to see what they're doing there. Thanks, Nora. We will see you tomorrow on CBS This Morning. I'm Anthony Mason in New York. Thanks for watching. Good night.